studio engineers. Thank you so much for checking out the Home Recording Network. One of my more recent videos I made on how I edit drums in Logic Pro got a question. So, someone asked a question about groups and grouping in Logic. And since I don't have a lot of videos on the more basic processes in mixing and Logic, I figured I'd make a video just explaining groups and show you how I use them in both the recording and the mixing stage. I have this mix up here that's still in the tracking stage because vocals haven't been recorded yet, but I have done a little bit of mixing. And if you can tell, this is very tightly edited. The band sounds really tight. Yeah, so if you already don't know, editing is huge because if your song is not super tight and the band's not in time with each other, or there's any moments in the song where it falls off, your music's not gonna stack up against other music out there, that sounds pretty much perfect. And the groups feature in Logic is just playing such a huge role here because this is how we record multiple things at the same time. This is what allows us to edit drums and bass and any instrument that might have multiple microphones on it. For example, in this song, we are utilizing groups on all of the drum tracks because obviously we have multiple microphones on the drum kit. And we have three bass tracks here, and these are the same bass part. It's just I used two different pedal signals, and I also recorded just a direct signal. So while the bass player was playing, I basically split off to three signals and recorded them all separately. And groups really come in handy when we're doing this, both when we're tracking and when we're mixing. First, I'll just go over how I would set this up before I record. So here we're going to add two tracks. And let's say these are, two bass signals that I was going to record. So we have these two just blank tracks here. Let's open up the mixer and we have these two tracks selected. And now in the group area, let's assign them to the same group. So we'll just choose group 4, and then we'll go ahead and open our group settings here. Now we have all these options down here, and some of them are checked off by default. I'm just going to set this up how I would normally set it up. Then I'll run through what all of these mean. So if I was recording bass or drums, I want to have this editing section checked off here, and I want quantized locked audio turned on as well. Now, when this comes in handy is when you are editing timing. So for example, if you're editing some drums, maybe you're quantizing the drums, maybe you're manually editing a drummer to place him more in time with the song. This means if we move one of the tracks, the rest of them are going to follow. Now, this really makes complete sense because if you think about it, if we are going to move a kick hit and the overheads and the snare microphones, if those mics don't follow the kick mic, things are going to start to sound pretty odd. So we just have to make sure that these are checked before we go and edit any timing. And this will work for manual editing if you just go to manually cut and move a track, or it's going to work if you're using FlexTime. Now, for tracking, something that's really important is track alternatives. So I'm going to check that box as well. And this allows you to utilize take folders. So for example, when I'm recording a drummer, I never record just one take. You probably get 3 to 4 great takes, and then use take folders, for any mess ups. If there's maybe a fill that the drummer doesn't like, I'll, use the take folder to grab another fill from one of the 3 or 4 other takes that I have. And this makes sure that we're using all of the same takes for all of the tracks in our group. So for example, if we're using take one of the snare drum for a specific part of the song, it's also going to use take one for all the other microphones on the drum kit, like the overheads, the kick drum, so that everything's cohesive, because things would not sound right if we start mixing takes across our tracks. If I'm recording, I'm not going to have automation mode checked. I'll go over that in a minute. The only other box I'm really going to have checked here is record. And this is very useful. So if I want to start recording, I can click record on one of the tracks and it's going to arm the other tracks in our group. So this is especially useful if we're recording drums. You don't want to have to, select 11 tracks and tell them to record. You just want to, click the kick drum and then have all the other tracks get armed and ready to be recorded. Now let's go back into the settings and I'll just explain, everything I didn't go over. So for automation mode, I would have this actually checked when I'm recording a bass guitar. If it's multiple bass signals, I want automation mode selected, because if I want to do any volume automation on one of the tracks, I want the other track to follow along with it. On something like a drum kit, it really doesn't make sense, because if I want to go and automate the snare drum up in volume, I don't want the hi-hats to follow. I don't want the overheads to follow that. So I wouldn't have this checked for drums, but for bass guitar, I would. Volume's pretty simple. So if you have this selected, if you adjust the volume on one of the tracks, it's going to adjust the volume on the other tracks in the group. Mute is going to just allow you, kind of like the record, the arming of the track. If you hit mute on one track, it's going to mute all of them. You can also do that with the solo option. So this is a real quick way to solo, say, your drums. If you know you're going to want to hear your drum mix by itself quite frequently, you should probably check this, so that if you solo the kick drum, the rest of your tracks are going to be soloed as well. So you're going to, only hear the drum mix. And it's a lot easier than, selecting solo on, 10, 11 tracks, however many mics you have on your kit. And you can also select the pan option, which means if you pan one track 30% to the left, the rest of the tracks in the group are going to follow along. I never really use this, but it is an option that's there for you. Another option you have here that I never use is to select the same sends or effect sends on your group tracks. For me, I'm usually sending my drums to different effects. They're never really going to the same place, but this is an option. If you want to use the same effect send across all your group tracks, you have that as well. I hope if you had any questions on groups that they were answered, but if there's anything I missed or anything you want me to go over more, just let me know and I'd be happy to help you out. Hey guys, if you like this video, be sure to download your free Ultimate Home Studio Mix Guide with your go-to EQ and compression settings for all your tracks. And also be sure to register for my free online mix training that I hold a couple times a week, so that you can learn how to make radio quality music from your home without breaking the bank.